This video, I'm gonna break down one of the coolest documentary experiences of my career to date. I got to shoot a short documentary about Gareth Edwards and the FX5. We did this in just like 9 days across 3 countries, Nepal, Cambodia, and Thailand. It was wild. We were up in the mountains, down in the city streets of Bangkok, then ripping over to the temples of Siem Reap, pulling 16-hour days. At one point, we had to deliver this in just a week's time. Ultimately was never stressed about what I was delivering because there's a couple key documentary instincts and formulas that you can approach these projects with that will guarantee you the best story possible from the ingredients that you're bringing to your editor. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll also talk a bit about the technical side because I'm getting to use the new FX5 on this. And as well, I'm going to break down my Millinote. This is what the actual Millinote that I would use before I went overseas. And I didn't actually want to change much in this because I want you to see that some things change before you go over there. But at the end of the day, my subject, the person I'm following in this film, Gareth, still had the same mission. So we were able to pivot and make this documentary. So let's jump into this. This video is sponsored by Millinote. So here's my whole pre-production that I sent the editing team from Spine that was with Nick Dean and Eric Klein. They're fantastic. They have that beautiful blend of documentary and style, commercial style that I needed for a project like this. I had the chance to work with Nick Dean on my piece Trails of Dust, so I knew they were up for the challenge and I needed a team. Often I'll edit my own stuff, but in this case, I really wanted some talented people working on the footage as I was traveling because, as I mentioned, we had a very tight turnaround. And also, Gareth works like a dog. He pulls 16-hour days back to back to back. There was moments when I was on set doing the gimbal for him, just pushing it on that slider, where I was sleeping, standing up, literally between takes. I thought I worked hard, but seeing Gareth out there, I realized I have a long way to go to catch up to some of these Hollywood directors. It's incredible, the work ethic and the pace that Gareth has, and it shows. It's why he's made films like Rogue One, Godzilla, The Creator, Jurassic World, Monsters. These are projects that require sustained attention for months, well actually years at a time, and I'm very impressed with what Gareth brought to the table. Now, every good film needs a character who has a mission. And so when I jump down into my pre-production here, that's the first thing I talk about in my director's statement. I could literally delete everything on this page and just have a good, solid director statement and give that to an editor. Brother. I feel bad for people with loud, obnoxious motorcycles. They just need some hugs. This whole thing here can be summarized in this first sentence, which is just that your film needs a question and your character needs a desire. And I mentioned that. The question asks, how far can a director push a tiny camera to create the biggest film possible? This is what Gareth wants. His question is his desire. He just simply wanted to take this FX5 with no plan and go see if he gave himself to these places, was open to what he could shoot. And also too, it could become a camera test. He could try different ISOs and work with that 75mm Kowa lens that he loves so much and go to these places that he has sometimes shot in for past films like The Creator, but in those circumstances, he had a crew of 100 people. So what was that like just being there by himself, getting to explore those environments without the big circus of hundreds of people descending on a place? I know that as a doc director, it's so nice just to be by myself with my camera. You get the most interesting interactions with people. And it was really cool to see Gareth, who's worked on these massive sets, also desire and want to pursue that goal. So this is what I keep coming back to. And this is why I say I'm not worried when I'm on set, when I'm shooting, if I'm getting the right footage all the time, because I know if it comes back to showcasing that mission, if I can imagine what that character would look like pursuing that want, then I'm gonna be okay in the edit. But you need variety around that. And so based on that want, that's where I come in and I begin to build my style and scene list. I didn't know all the scenes we're gonna be in. I knew the general countries, but what I knew I could do is begin to shoot certain styles, not just all sorts of different footage, but really hone in on specific looks so that my editor has the same ingredients to work with. If you just have too much chaos and you bring that to someone, or you have the same style of shot repeated over and over again, it makes for a very boring edit. So I broke this up, the wide world we're in, I shot a lot of this film on the 16mm. I find if you watch Gareth's films, whether it's the opening scenes from the creator or looking at the worlds that he created in Rogue One, he loves a wide shot. He loves to show you a space and bring you into that. So I wanted to replicate that with the BTS. So I got my first gimbal in a long time. I went and actually bought an RS4 for this project. I'm used to shooting on the DJI, but being that this was a Sony project and I was trying to use the FX5 as much as possible, except in the end, I think I shot with the FX6 just as much as it. I needed to have a camera on a gimbal. And in the end, when I actually look at the film, it really is just a series of wide shots.
And the great thing about when you're a bit more open-minded is the world will start giving you ideas.
Which honestly, when I look at that, even the shot of like the camera here, it's very wide. There's a lot of space around it, and I kind of love that. I feel like you get to see like you went on an adventure. That was the reaction that when I was showing this rough cut, which is all I'm actually showing right now. This is not the final piece, but people's reactions so far have been that they felt they got to go on an adventure. And I think that's a really big key with those wide shots. Then I talk about the macro details. This is where I wanted to see Gareth's eyes up close, feel the camera, get into that space. It's nice to have that macro side of things because it's a big payoff when you put it up against your big wide shots. What I wanted to then with the Soldiering with Gareth is I wanted to feel like you're just over his shoulder. As I mentioned, this is one of the coolest projects. I really respect Gareth's, not only his body of work, but his approach to doing these big Hollywood blockbusters. There's a grit and a texture to them that I feel is really reminiscent of documentary filmmaking. And that's what's so fun. If you watch that first third of Rogue One, feels like you're with a doc crew in a Star Wars world. It doesn't have the same polish of something like The Mandalorian. And I would come back to these, mill a note at night, and reiterate, am I getting this different style? Or am I following one style specifically? I mean, it wasn't until like halfway through this project that I realized I haven't shot a single shot of slow motion. So I did get a little bit of that, and you can see in the final edit, there's like 1 or 2 shots that made into it at 60 frames. But if you really want people to feel immersed in a new place, I think real time is the best. Like, it's how we see life. If you want it to feel ethereal and cinematic, then yeah, 60 frames is cool. But I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make, and this is still being made to today, is you do an interview and then shoot all 60 frames B-roll. The film feels slow. It feels slow motion. And of course, I also mentioned that I wanted to have prep scenes. So that's my style list. I didn't want to overload it, but I wanted to have a few different styles that I could rely on throughout the project, and essentially I was able to accomplish that. If you want to try out Mill a Note yourself, we have a link down below for a free trial. And if you want our 1-day documentary template, you don't have to even be an AOD to get this. There's a free link to that template that's part of Mill a Note. So you can get your trial Mill a Note and then go try out that 1-day documentary template. So you can go make a film in just 24 hours like thousands of our students have. And those films are incredible. We have a bunch on our YouTube channel. So if you want to be a filmmaker and go crush something in 1 day, go get that template and go get practicing. My next point too is talking about using montage. It's very tempting to just add a bunch of shots in a row in a piece, and you can get away with that in short documentaries when you're showing a wide variety of worlds and a variety of little moments, because sometimes you don't have continuous real-time scenes that would have a big purpose. In this case, I'm following someone shooting. So after every great montage, you really should think about having a moment of reprieve. It's having contrast to what you just did. You can't just constantly hit the audience over the face with montage after shot with loud music after loud music, because that's like an Instagram feed. That's just like someone doom scrolling a bunch of shots. And if you've ever gotten off Instagram, you can barely remember what you just watched because your brain turns it off. So you need these moments where you pause and live in a real-time scene and actually have no one talking before you introduce your character's voice back in.
So things like the FX5 sort of break down the barriers to who's allowed to make a film and how good it can look.
This is just some visual contrast, and it's something you can do a few times in the film. I mean, heck, we did it right off the top. We started with a really slow moment, then built up to an intense montage, had the title, and then just had Gareth building the camera. We're constantly doing valleys and peaks, but we needed to build somewhere. Your film can't be wall-to-wall music. Your film can't be wall-to-wall talking. Your film can't be wall-to-wall montages. Break up your edits. So in Milanote, I often will just drop a document in here, but what's fun is you could actually just copy and paste the text from anywhere. If you come down to here, you can say convert to document. When you do that, it becomes this little guy here, which I already have that one there, so I can just delete that. But when I double click and open this, I can then just edit it like a Word document, which I like. It's not taking up all the space. But you'll see, I just broke down my film into 5 scenes essentially. We have the texture, that's that montage up front. Often when I'm saying texture, it's interchangeable with montage. And the quest, we're kind of setting off what Gareth wants. He's talking about this is a day and age where filmmakers have no limits to what they're shooting. And then scene 2, I talk about the prep. We get deeper into his desire and deeper into his philosophy, and those scenes are in the film where Gareth talks about wanting to do this camera test and to see what he can push the FX5 to do compared to what he's used to with the FX3. But we have to get somewhere. And for this film, it wasn't necessarily like there was some very clear story that Gareth was going to have this big cathartic moment where he discovered something about his childhood. It's him doing a camera test, but we needed to build somewhere. So what could we do? Well, the one thing that kind of became obvious when I was talking with Nick Dean is that he's going to the mountains. We're going to the Himalayas. We're gonna be up at like 12,000 feet. Feels like we're up in the heavens. So that's where we needed this piece to move towards, was something beautiful and climactic, and it felt like a great place for Gareth to have his final thoughts about this journey, and then to have a call to action to filmmakers.
And as you pick up the pieces and try and reform it, it now becomes something no one's seen before.
And this is really what the film was exploring, was saying this is a moment for us as filmmakers. I'm talking to you now, that the gear that we have across the board is incredible. There's never been a moment like this in cinema where you can have such incredible fidelity in terms of the image and color science in your hand across the board, whether you're using like a ZR that's $2,000 or this FX5. There should be no limitations to what you can go capture. And I can't stress enough these days, with everyone having amazing cameras, how important it is for you to focus on your storytelling. That is the key differentiating factor. And furthermore, it's important to not just be doing that on your own. It's getting feedback. It's learning how to collaborate with others. And that's a big part of the success that we see for the filmmakers inside our Academy Art of Documentary. Like I mentioned, all of our students doing their one-day doc projects, getting those landed on broadcasters, winning awards to them. And one of our students just told us that his project, The Iron Snail, just landed him a $100,000 budget for a feature-length documentary. The breakthrough for you is on the other side of your storytelling. It will not be you getting another camera. I know this is ironic, me saying this, because I just did a whole piece on the FX5, but if you listen to what Gareth says in this film, he is constantly reiterating the idea that there are no more excuses in terms of the technology. It's in the eye of the director. So get out there and get shooting. And if you want a community to go alongside you, then you can check out Art of Documentary, and I'll put more information down below because our doors are opening later this year. For me, emphatically, the thing that influences my films the most is the music. So I can rarely make a Milanote without putting the music there. And what I love that you can do is just, you can drop the whole file into your Milanote. And so while I'm writing this opening scene, I can actually hear the music that I'm thinking could work for that. And this is not the song we ultimately used, but you can hear the tone and the emotion is very similar to what made it into the final piece. Having these references here is great for your editor, because they can even just like right-click them and download the file, and so they can drop that right in the edit timeline and begin working on what you've been imagining. I love having a Milanote because it's just kind of my brain transferred to the team. I don't always have to go back and re-explain everything. They can jump into these visual style cards and immediately see the kind of film and texture that I'm looking to create. And I'm just looking back at some of these. This is actually very similar to a moment from the film. Oh, that's cool. I hadn't actually thought about that till now. It's just like Gareth in the Siem Reap temple with the monk. Another thing I do before I get into my interviews is I actually like to build quotes And that's how I create my questions. I kind of reverse engineer it. So I'll write down the things I imagine that I could hear Gareth saying in an interview and think about what's the coolest thing I could have this guy say. And then I reverse engineer in the quotes, or rather the questions, so that I'm kind of getting to these ideas. He doesn't have to say these things, but based on my pre-interviews, based on some of my chats that I've had with him, I can kind of get the sense that maybe he would talk about these things or talk in this way. So what's the question that would help prompt that versus just creating a question and hoping for the best? It's sometimes knowing the goal of your question can be helpful.
Just go get a camera and shoot a film. There's nothing stopping you.
It's not trying to lead the witness, or I guess it kind of is, but if you've done a pre-interview, I still think this is in the spirit of documentary, that you're not trying to manipulate your person to saying something that isn't of them, but it's also kind of keeping track of some important quotes you need, because you need these good quotes. And I loved how well spoken Gareth was, because it really did help us be able to create a bit of that mystery and thought-provoking perspective when we're just doing a dang camera test. See my gear list here, which reminds me I probably should talk quickly about the technical side of the film. I went into this project shooting mostly anamorphic. I shot on the Arcana 45 and 75 a great deal. Did that a lot on the FX6. I would have loved to have had the open gate for those anamorphics like I did on the FX5, but I was shooting on the FX6 because I still got to have my giant cine monitor built off that, which yes, I could use that on the FX5, but I like cabling into my batteries. I'm just a creature of habit. I've just shot for like 2.5 years straight on a feature film on an FX6 that I wasn't just going to suddenly completely strip myself away of my normal process. That said, I shot a ton on the FX5, mostly on the gimbal, but I mix and matched it at times. There was times where I wanted to look a little more low profile, so I'd put on the eyepiece on the FX5, and then I'd add this crazy little adapter on the side with the MKE 400 mic from Sennheiser, and then I'd throw on an anamorphic or one of my other lenses, stick that up to my eye, and I could be pretty low profile because Gareth was wanting to keep the crew really tight in terms of our presence on set, so we weren't disturbing these environments or, again, getting the wrong performance out of people. So having my camera kind of stripped down was really helpful. But then whenever I was on the gimbal, I was on the G Master 16-35, great lens, and with the new AI software of the FX5, it can track people all day. Funny because I did have these Sony lenses listed here. I thought I might use the 28-70 and 50-155. They're incredible lenses, but they're big and they're heavy. I did bring my 16-35, it's slightly smaller, and for some reason I brought a 24mm little Sony lens. I don't know why. I think it was just like a backup, or if I needed something very light, I could use that. But yeah, I then shot mostly on the RS4 gimbal. I don't love gimbals. The RS4 Pro is great, but I do think the Ronin 4D is the best gimbal of all time. But you can't be using that all the time, and it means bringing an entire extra camera body. I think the coolest piece of gear, I just gotta say, is Gareth had these blow-up LED lights that were like these long little tubes. He had a bunch of them, and they were very useful. Magnetic, super light, super big, super soft, and you can change all the colors and do all the different modes. I forget who makes those, but I definitely want to grab a few myself. The one thing you have to be careful though is the on button. It doesn't have any sort of like switch. It can just be pressed down, and Gareth had it in his backpack, and when we took it, we were like feeling his pouch on his bag, and it was so hot. When we took it out, the thing was probably gonna light his backpack on fire, and luckily we found that before we got on the plane. It's kind of wild. It's definitely a design flaw. But besides it nearly taking down a Cathay Pacific flight, it's a pretty cool piece of gear. Amazing. Thank you for watching this. I hate goodbyes, but I love still writing things on my hand. I know I have to call Zach Ramlin, Luke Forsyth, and Danny Soto today, and I did none of those. I love all three of those guys, platonically. All right, see you in the next one.